Another Sunday race at Grafham Water. This is the second race of the day with a sort of, I think the forecast was like 12 gusting 17 coming from the northeast, mostly the north, which for Grafham can be quite a shifty direction as the landscape can get a little bit hilly. Now I decided to try and go a little bit further down the pin end here, hoping that I could get some clear breeze, and the key thing is come off the line with some speed. There's nothing worse than getting stuck with the solos and then just being unable to do anything, because they want to point really high, I want to point maybe a little bit lower to begin with while I get up to speed, then I might start pointing as high as them once I'm going, but it's not going to start like that, so I need to give myself as much opportunity as I can. And you can actually see some of the gusts already. You can see like here, you can see some of them on the water, so it was very up and down, and it made for quite a difficult race, to be honest. Now, to give you sort of the picture, this course was a triangle. We were going up to B, which is up right near the shore. Now, ideally, the course would have been a little bit south, with the committee boat on the south shore, and the windward mark a little bit more, well, further away from the north shore to avoid how shifty it was, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. Now, the course was a bit of a triangle, so going up to B, then across to Z, which is a new mark. That leg was kind of a run. Well, it was a kind of a very broad reach. Not enough to do anything exciting, but there was no strategy to it. You couldn't really jibe off about it just being completely in the wrong direction, so not much excitement there. But then we went down to C, which was quite a nice broad reach and good opportunity to get some speed. Now, I've decided to tack across here because it's starting to shift a little bit. There's definitely a lot more pressure funneling down the middle of the course. Luckily, with my extra speed, I've been able to cross the entire fleet here, which is quite convenient. But I am going to start catching the ILCAs, or the lasers, which are just ahead. So definitely something I need to bear in mind as I get closer. Now, as I was getting towards the windward mark, it definitely seemed if you stayed going right, you got sort of put into a big hole, and it was definitely not worth going all the way to the starboard ley line. You definitely wanted to head off towards the right fairly early on because it was the better shift, but not for long. You'll notice as I'm going along, I'm sort of slowly just getting shifted a little bit more, but the pressure's quite good. So I think the best strategy was to kind of start on starboard, go a little bit, tack fairly early on, head off to the right, but tack back as it starts to get a little bit softer and a little bit shifty, and head back off towards the left hand side, and then maybe tack back sort of coming into on the port ley line, maybe a few bait lengths off. I think that was sort of the best way up the course with what the wind was doing. Now you'll see that I'm going quite nicely here, and I'm playing the main quite a lot actually to keep the boat flat, but I am trapezing pretty high. But I have decided based on that shift to go back, and I'm actually using the lasers to sort of help me figure out what's kind of working, what's kind of not. You can see the solos have gone really far left, but I don't think that's quite the right move. But for them, they can pop tacks in really quite easily, so it doesn't really matter quite the same way. I found that when I went far right in the first race, I got stuck in a hole, and it just kept shifting to the point where I was just definitely on the wrong tack. But also once I tacked, I just couldn't really get going. But if you go too far left, then you get too close to the shore, and then it starts being pretty shifty too, so I guess the trick was really to go up the middle, ideally. You can see a lot of the lasers are starting to go back towards the right. Meanwhile, I'm just having difficulty with my kicker, which was poorly rigged for the day due to a last-minute breakage. More on that in a bit. But you can see the Flying 15's actually starting to go along that broad run, I guess. So we're getting quite close to the windward mark. But I'm thinking I want to keep clear, get some clean air, so I'm going to head past the ILCAs, the lasers, pop a tack in, and try and go around them. I don't really want to get stuck in the middle of them. That's not going to be fast for me, and they're going to get particularly unhappy, but we'll see what we can do. So yeah, that's a good spot to get in. I've got some clear air. Hopefully I'll be rounding the mark, not too near to the windward mark when all of them are rounding, because there will be a nice dead spot around that mark. This sea of, I think there was 14 of them out, most of them in full rig, so quite a lot of dirt. Nice gust coming along there. But it's quite a big shift, as you can see. As we get closer to this mark, it's very oscillating, going backwards and forwards. And now that I've got that massive wind shadow of ILCAs, maybe I should have tacked a little bit earlier. It's hard to tell really, because you haven't seen it, but I think on one of my later laps you'll see what I mean by the right hand side was definitely, I would say, more challenging, and every time I thought that would be a good option that lap, it usually wasn't. Yeah, here's the issue, just trying to get out the way of the lasers. Do not want to get stuck underneath, on top of them really. and I want to go around the outside so I can keep the speed. Yeah, it's just, as you can see, the wind's just really up and down. It's quite annoying. Like, it's good when the gusts are there, but as soon as they disappear, it kind of just shuts down, which is not great at this top end. As you can see, it's completely different to what it was at the start line. But luckily, I'm able to get going. Yeah, I'm barely trapezing at this point. Trying to open up the sail a little bit, but yeah, it's very, very different to what we experienced at the start line. Solos are already starting to come in from the after going hard left, it looks like. Now, let me explain the problem with my kicker. So, just before I launched, the soft shackle that I had very quickly done up for the Nationals last year, I had a very basic knot for the soft shackle, nothing crazy. That knot decided it didn't want to be a knot anymore, so as I launched, pulled some kicker on, it went pop. Nothing snapped or anything, just the knot came undone. Now, I was never going to be able to get that knot retied in time for getting myself ready to go to the race. So I came in, dropped the sail, and I just tied what was the soft shackle was attached to directly to my friction ring. Now, this means the friction ring was a lot higher, so as a result, couldn't get the kicker off as much as I wanted. So it was taking me a little bit of time to get used to what the kicker was doing. But as you can see, the main's still pretty opened up, so not a huge loss, but definitely could have gone a little bit quicker downwind if I could have opened that main up a little bit more. But I do have a new kicker cascade ready to fit, so we'll see if I can get that fitted once it warms up a little bit. I tried doing it the other day, but my fingers were getting very, very cold trying to do the splice, so we'll see. Now, we're going along quite nicely here. It's kind of very puffy. As you get further away from that shore, it starts to get a little bit puffy, so I've moved back a little bit, because as soon as it puffs up when you're on the foredeck, it can get quite unpredictable. So, yeah, here's the jibe mark. Now, I actually overstood the jibe mark a little bit. It's kind of hard to gauge, because I couldn't quite see where C was. Well, I didn't overstand it as much as I thought, but yeah, it's time to now try and overtake a bunch of these ILCAs who had a good head start on the downwind. Now, my strategy here was to basically, because the wind was again still being a bit up and down, was take the gust when I could and then bear away to just sort of keep the speed going. Sort of the classic, I think the move is head up in the gusts and then bear away in the lulls. So I was trying my hardest just to try and keep the boat going on the plane. And trying to go above the lasers, which they hate when I do that, but it's in everyone's best interest, because if I can stay on the plane, I'll get past them pretty quick. But they don't necessarily understand that, so I appreciate that it's annoying. I come and take my massive 12 meter squared sail over their 7 meter squared sail. Yeah, I can understand it upsets them, but what can you do? So, yeah, you can see it's a little bit up and down, but there's enough wind to be enjoyable. I got it going quite nicely here, but I'm still trapezing pretty high. I couldn't quite tell if I had enough kicker on, so you notice I keep playing around with it, because I'm just not quite certain if because everything's not quite where I used to have the settings. I'm not kind of like, maybe it's enough, maybe it's not. As you can see, making some good gains on the lasers now. I'm trying to see how many of them I can get past before the leeward mark. It's going quite nicely, I would say. It's looking really quite nice. Now, the leeward mark is coming up. Now, I want your thoughts. There's a laser radial that is pretty close to the mark. Now, I was going to try and get an overlap on them and make them let me on the inside. Now, you may argue I might not want that. I want to go wide around the outside and keep my speed up. But I thought I could squeeze in on the inside, especially because sometimes the lasers don't round the marks very well, and that can be very annoying when you're trying to go around the outside, because there's like a bus-sized gap on the inside, and you wish you went on the inside. So, as you can see here, the mark is there. I've got another 2 boats in front of me, or just one. And as you can see, he shouts no water, but I reckon he wasn't at 3 boat lengths quite yet. He reckons he was, and that's fine. He's entitled to that. And obviously it worked quite well for me going around the outside. He tacks fairly early on, which helps me. I think he goes in just a second. Oh, there you go. There he goes. I decide to go before that laser does, just to stop myself getting stuck underneath them and then getting stuck in a rut. They have gone, but luckily I'm able to sort of just about miss them, so I'm able to accelerate off. But I reckon I had overlap with that laser radial. Or sorry, I definitely didn't have overlap, but I reckon that if I had kept going, I potentially, if it was like the America's Cup, with GPS, and you could see exactly to the millimeter the overlap, I reckon I probably would have had rights. They reckon that I didn't, but I had this misconception that I think people completely misunderstand what 3 boat lengths are, and they normally start shouting it at like 6 boat lengths, and you go, do you actually know how long your boat is? It's normally when you've got lots of these similar boats close together, 3 boat lengths becomes very apparent, but it's not that much distance really. 3 lasers, that's what, 12 meters? 12 meters? Yeah, 12 meters, about 4 meters long. It's not that much distance really. Anyway, we're on to lap 2. This time's a little bit easier. On the right hand side is, I think, the lead laser, so I've now got past them. I'm now moving my way onto the Flying 15 fleet. Now there was like 4 of them plus a Scorpion. The Flying 15s are difficult because if you've ever sailed against Flying 15s, because they're quite quick boats, but they've got keel, which means, how are they quite quick? It's because they've got a lot of sail area, and that sail area is renowned for producing a lot of dirty air, so you do not want to get stuck underneath them. Now I'm making the move here to tack quite early on, like I said in the last lap. A little bit to the left, then tack off to the right. As you can see, the other lasers in the lead are doing the same, which sort of helps to reassure my theory. If these guys are in the front, then probably not a terrible idea. You see I'm still going quite nicely, but I'm still trapezing pretty high, which is annoying. A little bit tangled there. The other thing we have to consider is at Grafton we run 2 courses, so I'm doing round the cans, which is what everyone without an asymmetric spinnaker does, and then there's a windward leeward on the right hand side. But it does mean sometimes downwind the windward leeward, creep into the upwind of the round the cans course. So there's the VX1 that was out, and you can see it in the 700 on the right hand side. So you do have to sort of encounter that a little bit too. It's not too bad. So that's one sort of disadvantage of going too hard to the right, is that you'll interact with their course, and some of those cats will produce a lot of dirt too. Now you can see the lasers have tacked back. They're now all heading back to the left. I'm thinking potentially I want to do the same, but at the moment I've got quite a nice bit of puff going. I'm having to play the main quite a bit. I'm thinking, can I drop myself? There you go. Bright minds think alike. And you can see the Flying 15s just ahead, one just to the left of me and one directly in front of my nose. So I'm sort of kind of keeping an eye on what they're doing. That might be a Scorpion actually, that one. But I'm going really nicely on this tack. But the thing that I kept forgetting, and this is where I need to get my new compass mount printed and stuck on the boat, is that while I felt like I was going really well, the heading was pretty crap, to be honest, to the mark. I can't quite see the mark, but I kept looking over, I could barely see it over my shoulder, because this tack just wasn't quite going quite as well. I think if you were to like time lapse what we're watching right now, I'm bearing away more and more and more, and losing a lot of height, whereas I really should be tacking back now and going back up the left hand side. But the breeze was just so good on this side, so it's hard to tell, because obviously heading's not everything. If I'm going to go, especially in a 600, if I'm going to be going really nicely upwind on the right hand side, then maybe it's better to go this way. Yeah, here's where it starts to get really, you can see I'm just bearing off loads. I lost like 5 degrees there, 10, but then it's gone back up again, but then it's dropped off. That nice puff has finally ended as I've got to the gap where the hill over there sort of starts. So I hope I tack off now, because this is looking rubbish. There we go. I probably should have tacked off potentially a little bit earlier, because I've left that nice little channel down the middle, which has now left me in this sort of vulnerable position, you could say. There we go. Yeah, very tricky day with the gusts, and very, very shifty, but it's all really good practice, something that I'm trying to clock my head on, and hopefully my sort of rambles of what I was thinking and what I'm thinking now watching the footage back is helpful to other people too. I'm mostly doing this to help myself figure out what I could have done differently, because at the time it felt quite frustrating that the wind I had expected to, and when I launched it was pretty nice, and then it dropped off. But you can see it's getting lighter and lighter as I get towards that windward mark, which is not ideal. But I am still having to play the main a fair amount just to keep the boat flat. Now the lasers are still far on the left hand side. I can see the Scorpions coming across on port, so they're going to duck me. But I'm not quite on the ley line yet. I am going to have to pop another 2 tacks in. The mark itself was kind of in between the hills. You can see over there, I think, where one of the cats is. It was sort of somewhere over there. There goes the Scorpion. Yeah, we'll see if this pays off. I think the lasers have still got a fairly good idea going a little bit more left. But I'm still going quite nice. Oh, I am on the ley line. Okay, so yeah, I definitely shouldn't have gone to the starboard ley line that early. That was a rookie move. I should have definitely gone up the middle a little bit, but looking at the lasers over there, I've definitely made ground on them. it's always annoying when in these sort of marginal conditions, if I'm only just trapezing and I go the wrong way, then I might meet the lasers at the windward mark, but no, with them at the start line. So, that's definitely something to consider. Is maybe I shouldn't. So yeah, downwind again. I sped this bit up because it's not particularly exciting where there's no strategy whatsoever. I do kind of hate when we do these triangles sometimes where, I love downwind. It's people say that downwind's quite boring in a 600, but I think because you can throw jibes in whenever you like, as long as you're happy that you're not going to throw it in, because it will throw you in if you do it wrong. You can really play the jibes, and it's something I do quite a lot at the Nationals, is throwing jibes in to throw people off a little bit sometimes, but also just to get clear air. It's really nice. I really like the way the 600 jibes, actually. Maybe I'm a minority, but it feels really good when you jibe it compared to other boats I've sailed. So yeah, bottom reach, not as windy as last time, but I'm going to catch those flying 15s. Now, flying 15s are pretty quick downwind with their kites, so it's not very easy to actually get around them. What I'm going to do, though, is just focus on getting myself speedy, so I'm pointing a little higher than I need to, waiting for a good gust to hit me, and I'll bear away. Still trying to get that sail set up. I just could not figure out if it was set up or not. Hopefully, for the Oxford Blue this weekend, I'll have a better setting because I've got my kicker, well, at least to the correct lengths now. Yeah, it was quite nice, this breeze. At times, don't get me wrong. It was really nice coming back in. I took a really nice long broad reach, and I finally got myself down to the knot actually on the back corner. So very different to this race. Sadly, the camera died, so I don't have any cool footage from that. But catching those flying 15s, maybe it was the next lap where I really caught them. I think I got past a few of them, but maybe not all of them. Yeah, they're quite low in comparison, but I think they were trying to fly the kite, so this is kind of almost a great advantage to me. Yeah, they're flying the kite. If they fly the kite, that basically means they're not going to try and luff me, because out of all of the different classes at Grafham, you can almost guarantee that a flying 15 might luff you on the reach, because they do not want your big 12-meter sail coming over the top of them, understandably. It's the sort of thing the lasers could maybe learn a lesson from, but I don't want to encourage that behaviour from them, because there's a lot more of them. Yeah, it's very up and down, but yeah, you can see they can't really luff me, so I'm pretty safe to just sail over the top. But a few of them further down have dropped early because they're not going to make the mark. So yeah, it's just sort of definitely worth considering. That's Musto, who's just going out for a play. This is going really nice. I'm pointing directly at the mark. Hopefully I go a little bit lower, just so I can have a nice rounding. Not that the rounding hugely matters, because I'm going to tack off pretty early anyway. All I've done is lose all my speed, so maybe I shouldn't have worried about the rounding so much, because I've just parked. To be fair, the wind has dropped off too. I'll definitely take some of that kicker off. There we go. Yeah, I've got past, I think there's 2 more flying 15s ahead, so a little bit more work to do to be able to get past all the boats. For context, the asymmetric fleet start first, then the flying 15s and double-handers with symmetric spinnakers, then the ILCAs, and then the single-handed fleet. So I basically am the fastest boat going around the cans, and I start last. So my entire race is basically trying to get past everyone. Now I do 4 laps, everyone else does 3, because I got just past the final flying 15 at the final mark, and the race officer was like, yeah, they're going to be a while, you can do another lap. Which I was grateful for, because I think that probably helped me on handicap a little bit, having a whole lap of clear air, but also I was ready to have a break, and I don't think it would have dramatically impacted my result. I think I would have still won the single-handed fleet, and I worked out in the laser fleet I came 3rd with the actual result, but if I'd only done 3 laps I would have come maybe 5th, so maybe it did help me. It added like an extra 30 seconds to my corrected time. This 3rd lap is looking really soft now. It's very, very soft in comparison. Very interesting to see how over the space of, 20 minutes, the wind is doing all sorts of different things. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm trying to take a bit of downhaul off, but the issue with the 600 is as soon as you pull downhaul on, once your kicker's on, it doesn't really want to come off unless you take the kicker off, which is, makes sense, but a little bit frustrating sometimes. Okay, we're finding a little bit of a groove here. It keeps oscillating, like backwards and forwards, no matter what I do. Like I've done in the previous laps, when it starts feeling a bit rubbish on the left, start heading to the right. Now I really hope I decide to go back to the left a little earlier than I did last time. But it's still kind of light. But it's generally okay. Yeah. Just kicking my board down. Because it was supposed to be quite a windy race. Definitely doesn't need that much board up. Still very up and down. I can see the flying 15s have tacked onto starboard. Yeah, onto starboard, going back up the left-hand side. I might follow suit, to be honest. Could be worth doing, but it's hard to tell because it's definitely dropping off now. So it's not. I say it's easier to tell actually because last time I had a really nice puff, so I was very motivated to keep the speed. But now I'm not so sure. You know, it's like I'm not really going very quickly. Okay, we're going okay. We're going okay. Getting a bit of speed, but as you can see, as I'm getting speed, I'm just bearing off more and more and more and more, and I'm just losing so much height. So I'm glad I've gone for the tack. But this is where it gets difficult. I've got the 2 lead flying 15s, and because they're in the lead, they're also pretty competitive, and they know what they're doing. So it means that they're tacking on all the shifts, and they can, because the flying 15s are, well, it's a relatively quick boat to tack. With great skill. Well, it's not as quick as a single-hander like a laser, but these guys can throw them into tacks fairly quickly. But again, I'm getting headed on the other tack. Like, I mean, it's not really... It's oscillating, right? It's constantly going backwards and forwards. And so it's important to not let the oscillations get to my head because I can't tack every oscillation. I will be tacking every single time I finish the tack. I won't actually make any ground. Now, I think I'm making some good ground, but I'm a little bit worried about the dirty air off that flying 15 ahead there. I'm not quite in their dirt, but I'm gonna make my way into that dirt if I'm not careful. But maybe I can get a bit of height. But that's the issue. Flying 15s can point crazy amounts. So you don't really want to rely on the fact that, yeah, I can point higher than them. Oh, don't be silly. Double-handers, it's hard at the best of times, but a flying 15? Don't be silly. Not gonna happen, is it? Okay, so I think about going for a tack, and as soon as I do that, flying 15 goes for the blimmin' tack, when I was already worried about their dirty air, so I made the decision not to tack, because the only reason I was tacking was I thought I was in the dirt, and that's why I just wasn't quite getting going. And the minute I think about going, there you go. And I was hoping they would go a little bit sooner, to be honest, so I end up going a little bit further. And then it starts actually being quite nice, so it must have been their dirty air, to be honest. But so I should have really tacked this a bit earlier, but I still didn't want to go to the right-hand side. This time I've gone straight to the other ley line, the port ley line. And you'll see, because they're going to start coming straight towards me now with their kites up. Yeah, it's just really light at this top end, because you can see the size of the hills. There's this like whole forest bit on top of a hill, which is quite obvious if you cycle around the lake like I do sometimes. But it's not great for sailing from this direction. It definitely would have been better if we were nearer towards the water tower on the west side, but there was some class training for the ILCAs happening, so we were in the middle, which is fine, but definitely would have been better over that side from this direction, where the trees are a lot less built up, and you can definitely... It's bigger, so you don't have to be as close to the shore too. Okay, so we're catching up to these two flying 15s. It's going to get pretty hard now to beat them, because they're going to pull their kites up and be this massive wall of dirt as I try and get around them, and they're going to just, well, be really wide and annoying, so perks of lots of sails, hey? Okay, we're looking good. I think we've made pretty good ground on the lasers at this point. They're going to be coming round to start their third lap. I'm thinking this breeze is really annoying me now, to be honest. Really shifty. I mean, everyone says, like, oh, Grafham doesn't have shifts. Oh, yes, it does. I mean, it's the same with anywhere, right? Like, I think of Bow Beach as a good example. Bow Beach is a nice little reservoir, but the issue is it's got a lot of trees, like Grafham, but it's not very big, which means that all your courses are going to be near, the marks are going to end up being near the shore, and so it's really shifty, especially when it comes from directions that are not from the south, where their dam is. So yeah, Grafham has the same problem if you put the marks really near the shore. Go figure. So the flying 15s are much higher than I am. I don't really want to go that high because what's it called? It's just really rubbish that close to the shore. But maybe they found a puff and they headed up for it. As you can see, I'm not getting as far forward as I'd like to because it keeps getting puffs, but just not enough to really do anything with. I really catch them up with that puff though, which is nice. Now I've got to start thinking about doing a jive, which is, you know, not quite ready to do a jive, but we're getting pretty close to the jive point now. Sun's coming out, which is nice, and it definitely starts to pick up, which means these the rest of this lap and the next one, probably where I make a huge, was why I made some gains on the handicap front. This lap upwind I definitely would have lost some because of how light it is, but the last lap sort of made up for it a little bit. So, now I've got 2 flying 15s. One of them's got the kite up, one of them hasn't got the kite up. So what am I thinking here? I'm thinking, let me get up to speed. I don't really want to go over the top. I know how this ends, badly. So I'm hoping that if I've got enough speed, I'll be able to just sort of shoot through the dirt and spit out on top of them. And yeah, they're generally leaving me alone. I think they actually go for the kite in a minute after seeing how the other guys go. And now I'm past them. It actually went very smoothly. So yeah, there's the dirt kicking in, I guess, a little bit. But then now I'm past them, I can point a little bit higher yet again, get myself back up going, and then I can bear away. The other guys are just south of me, but I think they are... I think there might be a third one in front of me as well. I could be lying. But yeah, really nice reach now. I mean, I've got no dirty wind, which also helps, but it's definitely puffed up, which is really nice. And I'm able to, the key thing is build a gap on the flying 15s, because the last thing I need is one of them trying to squeeze around the mark with me, or deciding they want to attack when I'm not ready, or number of reasons why it's good to be ahead. And I think this is probably where I'm able to make a lot of my ground back up from that lap, to be honest, because the reach was so much windier. But I'm still trapezing pretty high. I'm actually, at this point, I think I'm trapezing at my highest setting. I've gradually been getting higher and higher. Now I'm thinking about probably wanting to go a little bit lower. There's the mark. It's quite a nice rounding. Other than I probably could have put some controls on. It's always the problem when you're trapezing really nicely. Like that kicker control line is suddenly seems really far away, especially when you're trapezing this high. It's not too bad when you're a bit lower, but yeah, you bend your knees and you're like, still can't quite reach it. Alright, I think I'm officially in the lead now of all of the round the cam boats, which is why maybe I should have stayed behind the flying 15, then I would have got finished a lap early. Yeah, you can see two of them, they're going. One's dropped it and the other one's pulled the kite up now. So by the time I go across the line, I think at least one of them is on this upwind leg now to the finish line, but a shortened course gets put up just after I go through the line, which is, you know, fine, but a little frustrating. Yeah, I really want to be a little bit lower now. It's kind of picked up again. This last lap's looking quite nice. But I'm sort of... I don't want to go lower yet because I'm expecting that this gust is just temperamental. It's just temporary, right? And by the time I... Oh, here we go. I finally... yeah, I thought about going lower, but then it drops off again. It's not worth dropping lower because I can't quick... If I was crewing, right, I could easily adjust it, whereas... It's not worth me adjusting the trapeze adjuster just to, you know, make it more likely that I'm going to get myself a little bit wet when the gust ends and I end up in a lull. However, as you can see here, it's going quite nicely now, but I need to remember that it's probably worth me tacking off fairly quite early, and there's another shift. You know, I'm bearing off a little bit there. Should definitely, there we go, yeah. And there's the shortened course going up. There we go. Good. So now I have no boats to help me figure out what's the best way to do this course. I am going to start catching up the back of the solos and the single-handed fleet. So I've got them, but they're too far away to make sophisticated decisions. I'm getting shifted again. Like, it just doesn't feel... It's just very difficult to know what shift tack to be on. Like here I'm now as high as I can go and I'm struggling to get going, whereas on the other tack I was quite low. I'm actually lowering myself there a little bit though, so maybe it is improving, but Now I'm thinking I should have gone a bit more left maybe and just accepted the shift. This is where playing the main is really important because it's just so up and down. And something else I've been trying to work on a little bit too is being able to, is when you have to play the main, bear off and accept the speed. You lose a bit of height, but the speed will probably be worth the gain. Whereas I'd always just try and keep the height, which is not necessarily always the best move. I don't know. Let me know what you think if that's what you're supposed to do. I think typically people just let the main out, but they keep pointing the rudder in the same direction, rather than just letting the boat accelerate best on a close reach, for example. Okay. I've tacked back, but I've tacked back fairly early, so I am going to have to do another couple of tacks, but that's fine. We're okay with doing couple extra tacks. But it's so up and down, it's very difficult to put yourself in a position to power up without then being completely dead when it all drops off. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to keep an eye out for the gusts ahead, but it's quite hard because they're so short and punchy. It's really hard to tell like what is actually the best move to do here. Just can't quite make my mind up. I do think I'm doing a fairly good job of keeping the boat relatively flat though. It's something I'm trying to work on because sometimes what you think is flat is not flat, and this camera angle really emphasizes what is flat and what isn't flat. So watching this back is very, very beneficial. I'm trying to think, do I want to tack? But like, it just keeps getting gustier and gustier. And it's like, well, I just want to take the speed if I can. Ideally, I'd be lower on the GPS here. It's sort of, but you know, the closer you get to that shore, the more likely you're going to get, you know, into lighter breeze. Yeah, it's getting shifty, but I'm going to tack back because I'm getting close to that ley line now. Ooh, didn't. I sort of did a really good half attack, and as soon as I got to the other side of the boat, I just sort of forgot to finish the tack. Something else I think has been pretty good is the tacks have been fairly consistent in this. I'm working on a new footwork technique to basically go in front foot first, get the back foot ideally across the centerboard case, and then it means my front foot can then move to the gunnel. It basically means I can cross the boat in like 2 big steps, whereas before I maybe do it in like a load of little steps. Especially if you go on Instagram and watch some of my earlier reels of tacking from this time last year, or sort of April, May, I was definitely doing a lot more steps, whereas now I'm doing a lot more predictable steps, and hopefully that means that I'm getting the weight in the right place. I'm also trying to get more comfortable unhooking and turning before I've necessarily unhooked, just so that when I am doing the footwork, I don't end up in the situation where I've come in but the boat's not turned enough, so I don't want to have to stop mid-tack. I want to be able to keep crossing the boat because the boat is ready for me on the other side, whereas you don't want to tack too early, or you don't want to unhook and then come in so you're all ready to cross, but if you haven't turned then the boat's not ready. You know, it's difficult trying to line it all up, especially where I don't have a cleat for the main, which is a good thing for playing the main, but it makes the tacks maybe harder because I can't keep the main sheet tension on as easily. So that's another thing. Actually, just another thing to watch is when I've been trying to do a lot more as I go around the Windward Mark to go on a run, sort of keeping my weight out on the rack and then physically unhooking with my hand. I don't know if I'm doing that as a poser technique, because that's what all the 49er guys do, or whatever, right? As they come in, as they unhook, they stay out for as long as possible and they unhook. Or if I should go back to my old technique, which is to basically just step into the boat like a crab, and then once I'm in the boat and it's all flat, then I just unhook by either flicking my hips or whatever. Flicking my hips normally works quite well. Yeah, let me know what you think. Obviously, I don't have a free hand, so it does make it all quite awkward, because I'm trying to let the main out at the same time as unhook. So maybe it's not as quick as what my old technique was, but we'll see. Okay, we're on to the final leg now. I've just got a power up, and as you can see, it's going pretty punchy now. It's going very, very nicely. I can get my weight up. Now I've just got to send it to the finish line and then worry about getting through the finish line. So while I did win this race, obviously handicap racing is a controversial topic at the best of times of, well, you only won because it was windy. It wasn't really that windy, so I think I did quite well to beat stuff like the D0, who's very, very good, and most of the ILCA fleet too, to be honest. Obviously they had their own dirt a lot of the time, but it's not necessarily what I would call perfect 600 conditions, especially that beat. Really, really struggling, and I couldn't get all the kicker off downwind, so I think my upwind strategy was pretty good. I think we've identified a few points where maybe I went too far to the right hand side ley line, maybe like the flying 15 situation where I went to tack and then bailed on the tack. That's all lost time, and handicap racing doesn't care about where you finish on the water position wise, it cares about your time to do the course. And so all of that costs seconds, and those seconds cost you positions. So I'll let you decide if that was, if those were decisions that maybe I could have done differently. Oh, and don't forget that laser mark rounding. Should I have just focused on going around the outside, or should I have focused on trying to squeeze past them and then round, assuming that I would then be pretty, not just neck and neck with them, I'd be nose ahead. Another very nice rounding. That upwind really does just kill my speed. I mean, the sail's pretty flat. I should probably have had a little less outhaul on maybe, but I'm still trying to figure out my outhaul setting. I used to run it really baggy, but just sort of figuring out that may not be the best technique. Not that tack. I also want to try doing wire-to-wire tacking. Something that's really good is I'm really good at coming in for the tacks and getting to the other side, but then the issue is the boat doesn't really start accelerating until I'm on the rack. So maybe I need to start sitting on the rack to hook on, or standing one foot on the rack, one on the hull as I hook on with my hand, or trying the full wire to wire. Obviously difficult in a single hander. Maybe try that too, because on a day like in these gusts here where I'm now just intentionally close reaching to this finish because I know it will get me there quicker, considering the line's fairly parallel to the mark-ish. And I haven't quite got the hands to get myself set up for going nicely, but I know that what I'm doing there is just focusing on, again, time, getting there quickly, not necessarily the position. I'm not trying to defend against anyone, but there's the finish, and I thought, let's just take this gust and enjoy it while I can, while avoiding all the slow boats. A course where a reach like this would have been really nice, because this is a really nice, the starboard reach was really nice actually. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of some of my moves up the beat. If there's things I could have done differently, different moves on some of the slow boats, because even though I'm racing around on my own in the fast boat, I do like to think of this as a lot of strategy on how I can optimize for a lot of this on how I can optimize dirty traffic, you could say, getting around the traffic. Hopefully I can continue this at the Oxford Blue this weekend. The forecast maybe not quite as windy as this video, so we'll see how well it goes if I can get trapezing properly. But yeah, stay tuned.